Welcome to the deep dive. We're about to plunge into a really interesting stack of sources today.
Yeah, looking at how faith and, education, mission,
Mm.
innovation,
hmm
how it all sort of intersects.
Exactly. We've pulled together a few key pieces, haven't we?
We have. There's the course catalog from Redeemers University North America, RUNA.
Okay.
Then an article from OMF International. That's the organization that used to be CIM. It looks specifically at innovation and mission work.
Right.
And then a couple of other related items. One touches on AI and Bible translation, and some materials linked to HRH John Babatunde Lee.
Okay. So our mission here, what are we trying to unpack?
Well, I think it's about seeing how these faith-based organizations are educating their leaders,
Right.
how they're adapting their strategies, because the world is, well, it's changing so fast,
Definitely.
and how they're looking at maybe even starting to embrace new ways of doing things, new technologies to connect with people.
So finding the key insights, the connections, maybe some surprises.
Hopefully, yeah, seeing how it all plays out in practice.
All right. Let's dive into that first one then, the RUNA course catalog. What immediately jumps out about how they see their educational mission?
Well, right at the start, they frame RUNA as a university preparing and equipping leaders. But they use this specific term, preparing them to be ambassadors.
Ambassadors. Huh. Not just, pastors or scholars, ambassadors.
Exactly. It sets a certain tone, doesn't it? People sent out with a purpose.
So what shapes that purpose? What are the core values driving it?
They lay out several. There's passion, which they connect to loving God and neighbor, and that fuels their work.
Okay.
Then there's social responsibility. They're very explicit about integrating care for the poor, the oppressed, and even creation into the curriculum and campus life itself.
Interesting. So it's meant to be education with tangible outcomes, not just theory.
Absolutely. It feels very holistic.
Yeah.
They also highlight the church and its mission as, central to God's purpose, stressing unity among believers.
Makes sense.
And they mention continuous growth and discipleship, focusing on spiritual practices, and also their belief in the return of Christ as a kind of underlying motivation.
Okay, that gives a clear picture of the foundation. Who are they aiming this education at? What levels do they offer?
It's quite a range, everything from certificates and diplomas up to bachelor's and graduate degrees.
So pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. And for some of the higher level programs, the application requirements are, well, they're quite specific. They often want people with substantial existing ministry experience in a Christian church and some solid background in biblical studies.
Ah, okay. So often equipping people already involved in ministry and maybe taking them to the next level.
Seems that way, yeah.
Yeah.
Building on existing foundations.
And what's the goal? What do they want students to actually be or do when they finish?
They have these institutional learning outcomes, ILOs, they call them. And it's not just about knowing stuff.
Right.
It's about developing practical skills, being able to apply knowledge to solve, real problems. And really importantly, applying ethical principles and Christian values in their professional lives. Plus, being able to do research and just demonstrate professional competence.
Can we look at some specific programs, see how this plays out?
Sure. The Master of Arts in Ministry programs are a good example. You see specializations like pastoral care, counseling, family counseling.
Practical stuff.
Very practical. They integrate the theological education with, actual training for those roles. Rooted in Christian values, but aimed at providing real holistic support.
Equipping people for the front line, essentially.
Exactly. You see it in course names, too. Things like ethical issues in ministry or counseling in a multicultural context.
Oh, that's relevant.
Yeah, tackling diversity head on.
Yeah.
And leadership courses like organizational leadership that actually emphasize collaboration, bringing different perspectives together.
And if someone's aiming higher, strategically?
Well, they offer a doctoral program in transformational leadership, the DTL.
Yeah.
That one's specifically designed to equip leaders for, bigger strategic initiatives aiming for real transformation.
So from the ground up, it sounds like RUNA is focused on producing leaders who are grounded in faith, but also really skilled and ready for complex challenges.
That's the strong impression, yes.
Yes.
Practical, value-driven, and engaged with the world.
Okay, that focus on practical leadership is really interesting. And it makes you think about organizations out there doing the work. How do they adapt? Which brings us nicely to that OMF CIM article, right, on innovation and mission.
Yes, and this piece gives such a fascinating historical view. It really grapples with that fundamental tension. How do you stay true to the core, unchanging gospel message?
Yeah.
While the organization itself, the way you do things, has to change to stay effective. They even bring in a Chinese concept, permanence and change, Chongbian. The idea that things actually endure by changing.
Permanence through change. Wow, that feels incredibly relevant today. How did OMF actually live that out, especially through big crises?
Well, the most dramatic example they give is being forced out of China in the 1950s.
Right.
I mean, that wasn't a planned adjustment. That was a massive external shock. It was basically forced a choice. Adapt radically or, well, maybe cease to exist as they were.
So what did that adaptation look like?
It led to some huge shifts. They set up home councils in East Asian countries, really broadening their base beyond the West.
Okay.
They started bringing international members onto their teams, not just Westerners, and they pioneered working in what they call creative access nations.
Those are places where traditional missionary work is difficult, right?
Exactly. So they sent people with professional skills, doctors, teachers, business people who could integrate and serve communities in different ways, using their jobs as a platform,
Like a
essentially.
different kind of bridge.
Yeah. And more recently, as global migration patterns changed, they shifted focus again, looking more at international students, diaspora groups, people from traditional mission fields now living elsewhere.
Reaching people where they are now.
Right. And the article points out this isn't totally new for them. Even back in Hudson Taylor's day, they used things like inner-city evangelism in London, partly as training for candidates. So this adaptive mindset has deep roots.
So innovation wasn't just a reaction, it became sort of embedded. What does the article say about innovation itself?
It makes a really key point. Innovation often isn't about inventing something completely brand new from scratch.
Oh.
Frequently, it's more about the diffusion or the improvement of ideas that already exist, maybe adapting them for a new situation. And here's a crucial bit. Whether an innovation gets accepted can depend a lot on communication, on social networks, within the organization.
More than just how good the idea is.
Sometimes, yeah. More than just its theological grounding or inherent quality. It's about how it spreads and how people buy into it.
That's fascinating. People dynamics.
Exactly. Which leads them to say innovation should be seen less as a formal project and more as a mindset.
A mindset? How so?
Cultivating curiosity, creativity, being open to seeing what God might be doing differently in unexpected ways. They talk about creating safe spaces for people, especially maybe those without formal power, to try things out.
Because change can be threatening.
It often faces resistance.
Yeah.
So leveraging networks, learning from failures openly, that's all crucial. And there's a warning, too. Sometimes our habits, our established ways of doing things, can become idols.
Yeah.
We need the courage to ask, what if?
What if?
Yeah.
That's a powerful question. Speaking of massive change, COVID-19, how did that HIP mission work, according to the article?
Oh, it was a huge catalyst for adaptation.
Yeah.
Totally unplanned, obviously. Workers suddenly couldn't get back to their fields.
Right.
So they had to figure out different ways. Huge shifts towards online ministry, teaching seminary courses remotely, connecting with diaspora groups back in their home countries. Necessity really drove invention there.
Any unexpected upsides?
Yeah, the article mentions things like reduced travel costs and lower carbon emissions. They even called it clean mission sometimes.
Interesting. Can you share some specific examples of innovative ministries they highlighted? Real concrete stuff.
Sure. There was one initiative shared by Sarah Hoskins about end-of-life care workshops.
Okay.
They trained local volunteers, some medical, some not, to provide holistic care, including Bible teaching, right, in their communities. And eventually it was handed over entirely to local Christians.
That sounds really empowering. Local ownership.
Definitely. Then there's the Cafe Koin ministry in Japan, run by Dale Viljoen. That's a business as mission approach.
A cafe.
Yeah, combining a cafe with English teaching and a Bible community. The name Koin itself had multiple layers of meaning, like park, connecting through English, light and salt, even echoing the Hebrew for priest.
Wow, very integrated. What was the core idea there?
Dale described it as focusing on being Jesus to others. Just carrying God's presence, showing people their value as image bearers. It shifted the focus away from pressure to, win people towards letting Jesus work through everyday life and interactions. He referenced 1 Peter 3 about sharing hope gently.
Ministry embedded in daily life.
Exactly. And they had to adapt during COVID too, found new ways to connect, apparently got some unexpected positive attention because of it.
Fascinating. Any other examples?
Yeah, there was also a section shared by someone identified as AY about work supporting children in homes and orphanages.
Right.
It highlighted the complex reality many kids aren't technically orphans, but are there for economic or other family reasons. It talked about the challenges these Christian homes face, sometimes issues with care quality or untrained leaders.
Tough situations.
Very. Their ministry focused on practical help, medical care, education support, health checks.
Was there a personal reflection in that part?
Yes, quite a powerful one. About the struggle to forgive theft, connecting it to Jesus' command to forgive endlessly 7 times, 70 times, and linking that personal struggle to understanding God's unconditional forgiveness and the children's identity in Christ, referencing 1 Peter 2.9 being called out of darkness. It really underscored the ongoing challenge of not just providing shelter, but truly improving care and education.
Wow. And finally, there was some research mentioned.
Yeah, a study by Visser on Aka church growth. It offered some nuanced findings, things like why people converted, sometimes relief from spirits or sacrifices, other times wanting to identify as Christian, maybe before full belief kicked in.
Complex motivations.
Very. It also looked at practices like marrying within the faith, how much personal evangelism happened compared to other groups, leadership structures where they met. It also acknowledged, the difficulties in research design, making sure concepts like conversion were understood culturally.
Okay, so this theme of adaptation, mindset, real-world application, it leads us to another element that popped up, technology, specifically AI.
Yes, artificial intelligence. It gets mentioned in the OMF context relating to Bible translation.
Right.
And it's also right there in the title of a SlideShare connected to HRH Janbabatundi Lee. Something about AI helping the church reach unreached souls.
The Bible translation example, that feels like it fits into a much longer pattern, doesn't it? Using technology for mission.
Oh, absolutely. It's a direct continuation. Think about the history from hand-copied manuscripts like the Codex Sinaiticus
And ancient stuff.
to early translations like Wycliffe's Bible, then the printing press with Gutenberg, which was revolutionary.
Game changer.
Huge. And now, mobile apps, digital Bibles, there's an example of a sham Bible app in the sources. It's all been about using the available tech to get scripture out there. AI is just the latest tool in that very long story.
And that SlideShare title takes it even further, reaching souls across the universe.
Well, yeah, that definitely shows a, shall we say, expansive vision some people have for AI's potential role. That's quite futuristic.
But it connects back to that core idea of innovation we saw with OMF, right?
Exactly. Looking at new tools, even really advanced, maybe slightly unsettling ones like AI, and asking, how could this help us fulfill the mission in ways we couldn't before?
Okay, let's try to pull these different threads together for everyone listening. What's the big picture emerging from RUNA, OMF, the tech examples?
Well, you see institutions like RUNA being incredibly thoughtful about how they prepare leaders. It's not just academics, it's embedding values, practical skills, social awareness, aiming for effective ambassadors.
Grounded and skilled.
Right. Then you have organizations like OMF demonstrating this resilience, this adaptability, sometimes forced by crisis, like leaving China, but also cultivated intentionally as a mindset.
That permanence and change idea.
Exactly. Holding the core purpose steady while being willing to radically change the methods responding to pandemics, shifting populations, you name it.
And the technology piece fits into that.
I think so. Both contexts show a willingness to explore new tools, whether it's improving Bible translation with AI, which feels very practical, or those more speculative ideas about AI reaching far and wide. It's part of that innovative spirit, using new means for the mission.
And the specific stories, the end-of-life care, the cafe, the children's homes, the ACA research, they make it real, don't they?
They really do. They show it's not just abstract ideas. It's about applying faith, education, and adaptive strategies in complex, sometimes difficult, real-world situations. It's that blend of core beliefs and practical, on-the-ground reality.
It really highlights how dynamic this all is, not static at all.
Constantly learning, adapting, trying new things.
So thinking about this tension, holding firm to core beliefs while also embracing change, asking what if, trying new methods, even new tech, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It does. What does that mean for any of us?
Yeah, for you listening. Consider the courage involved here. The courage for an institution like RUNA to define its values so clearly, or for an organization like OMF to navigate such massive changes.
And the courage for individuals running those ministries on the ground, facing challenges, trying new things like that cafe or the end-of-life care. It takes guts to hold fast to what you believe is permanent. And at the same time, have the courage to ask, what if? to look at new ways, new tools, maybe even things that feel a bit disruptive, and see how they might help you pursue what matters.
That tension between permanence and change, it's not just for these organizations, is it?
Not at all. It feels like a fundamental human challenge, really.
Yeah.
How do you stay grounded in who you are, what you value, while staying flexible enough to learn, adapt, and pursue your goals effectively in a world that just keeps, well, changing? What does that balance look like for you right now?